本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。What's good, Internet? It's Friday, August 7th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 334. I'm your host, Austin Walker, and I'm joined today by Ricardo Contreras.
Hello.
And Patrick Klepek.
Nintendo just reported a wild 428% surge in profits thanks to the lockdown game. 428.
Yikes.
That's a big
lot.
Number.
It's a big number.
Did you see that Animal Crossing has outsold Breath of the Wild?
That doesn't surprise me, actually.
Yeah. That hit at you could not have actually in a laboratory created conditions better for the release. Like you sat down and like Nintendo's like marketing was like, all right, just as like a game room experiment. Like, what would be the best way to release Animal Crossing? It wouldn't have come up in the top 10 of ideas of how it would have come out. It literally came out at the end of March. The end of March.
I know, it's wild. Yeah. It's unbelievable. So my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and I spent all day trying to hype myself up to go check in on my animal friends. I couldn't do it. I felt too bad still. It had been so long that it felt really kind of selfish to be like, I know what will bring me back, my own birthday. I'll go around and get birthday wishes from people. So I didn't go back to it. If this podcast, really quick, just sounds weird, it's because I am one of many people in Queens, in fact, one of many people around the country whose internet is out following a hurricane that did not. So here's what. So at first,
was it a hurricane or was it a tropical storm?
It was a tropical storm. It was a hurricane that turned into a tropical storm. I think as soon as it made landfall. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what I thought. My understanding is what happened is commercial grade power lines came down on not a data center, but some sort of like facility from my ISP, and they can't get in to repair the facility until whoever the local government is, I guess, gets the commercial power lines taken care of. Let them get access. But it means I was away all week. I got back 2 nights ago now. And from that point through now, I have not had internet in my house. And my understanding is anyone on this service in my neighborhood or many other neighborhoods in Queens also has not had it. Also, just to be clear, I cannot get other high-speed internet in my building. Maybe there's a DSL option, but like Fios doesn't come here. Spectrum has much of Queens on complete monopolistic lockdown, and it fucking sucks. So if the audio was weird, it's because I can't hear myself right now, which is very strange for me. I'm used to having a live feed of my own voice. So if I'm like too loud or too quiet, apologies. Also, it means the only games I've been able to play are things I already had downloaded, like stuff I set to download before I went on this trip. And also my laptop power cord broke. So I'm just cursed this fucking week. God. I couldn't even like go somewhere to get internet briefly. Not that that's like a thing now, but you know what I mean.
Just go down the street to the internet store. And,
exactly. But again, their internet would also be out because of this outage. Anyway,
there was one time some weeks back where my wife had a follow-up appointment after her labor, and so I had both kids with me in downtown Chicago, a place we haven't been too many times since. We only go down there for her various health appointments are down there because that's where she used to work back in the before. And I had both kids, and my oldest goes, hey, I gotta poop. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Public bathrooms don't exist right now. Just aren't a thing often. They are often, things have changed a little bit. But at the time, it's like often like private bathrooms or public bathrooms would be locked. Like you just couldn't go into those places because they're, as Will Smith calls them, COVID dens. And so I told her, I was like, hey, can you sit down? She's like, why? I was like, I need you to keep that inside you for the moment because I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do here.
Phrase.
And well, because she's 4. I don't know if, like, how well she knows, like, hey, I need you to squeeze those cheeks and like keep that poop in there right now. I don't know what her her skill set is in that regard. So like, just sit down for a second and just. She looked at me quizzically, and so I'm looking around, scanning. Like I feel like I'm like the Terminator, like bathroom options. Like is there a tree I could go behind that is just look? We're just gonna have. Sorry, this poop's just gonna live here now. There was nothing. It was like a too nice of a neighborhood. There was nowhere to go. There was like nowhere to hide, and so I knew through like this little corridor we had come through that. There were a couple of places that had like front desks, and I didn't know what they were for. I was like, let's go walk past those. So I've got one kid in a stroller. I got this other kid like hopping along, and there's this one spot, and I look in, and there's just all these empty like desks, and I was like, oh shit, that looks like some sort of like co-working space, like maybe like a temp one that you would go into if you just wanted to work somewhere for the day. And I walk in, and I asked the lady, I was like, I brought everyone in. I was like, everyone put on your goddamn masks, like put them on. We're gonna look really sympathetic. I'm like this bumbling father with 2 children. Like I want to make it seem like I've barely got it together because I need someone to like take some sympathy on me. Going with the 2 of them and asked, I was like, is there this child needs to poop? Like, please, like, can I use your bathroom? They're like, the lady's like, oh yeah, like. We got nothing going on here right now. Like, please go around the corner and feel free to use the facilities. Because it turned out to be literally like a co-working space where the desks are mashed together like inches away from, There were like dividers. Like they clearly at some point had tried to accommodate like early days of COVID by putting up like dividers between the spaces, and that fell apart. So I don't know why they were still even open, maybe for people to come get their stuff. But whatever the case was, they let us come in and use their bathroom. So there may not be internet stores, but there are places that pretend to be, and we have working bathrooms for a father that has found himself in an emergency situation.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you got that sorted out. That could have gone real bad.
Thank you. It was harrowing. That's why I told it. I was like, Dad does not have an answer to your query. I need to run the numbers.
We'll figure this out. Just stick with me. We're gonna figure out a solution. We don't have one now. I'm just gonna be honest with you. We don't have one now, Jessica. We'll figure it out.
It's like usually dads, 4 years in, you've run into a lot of scenarios like, oh, okay, how can I like fudge the numbers here to make it work? I was like, whew, this is a new one for Dad. He's not sure. Jessica.
God. Well, Patrick, can I interest you in a game in which you're walking around with your progeny and trying your best to keep her entertained, and you've realized she's kind of a different person than you, and there's all sorts of stress around the expectations of fatherhood. I know I could be talking about any video game these days.
Any that Sony has published in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
What if I told you this was a sequel to an indie game I knew you loved?
Oh. Okay.
What if I told you that this is Frog Fractions 4?
Right. So I've heard the rumor I've heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that yes, there's some DLC released for the HD edition of Frog Fractions 1.
Please, the game of the decade edition.
Game of the decade edition.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Please.
they're not wrong. Like, I think you actually could sit and make a credible argument.
Make the case.
If you were listing, like, straight up, you were listing a game. Like, people have forgotten Frog Fractions, but like when that happened, you could absolutely make a case on a decade list that is in relatively high even on that list. But yes, there was some. I was prodded by its designer. It was like, "Hey, here's a code for some hat DLC," and I was like,
Excuse me? Yeah, Hop's iconic hat.
I was like, I don't want you to tell me anything, but is this hat DLC? He's like, it's some great hat DLC. And I was like, okay, all right, well. And then, yes, the tweet I saw was that Frog Fractions 4 has been released. And I was like, oh, sure, why not? So please, I guess without spoiling, like, take me a bit on the journey of
I mean, my journey is kind of embarrassing. So again, I came home, I was like, I don't have internet. What am I doing? I guess I downloaded that Frog Fractions DLC. I may as well boot that up. And the first thing I did was played through Frog Fractions 1, because the game is just Frog Fractions is just Frog Fractions. You'd get it. It's in 4K. It's in beautiful 4K. So I replayed all of Frog Fractions. Not you really see them. You can really see those apples as they're falling from the trees. You can really see the bugs, and you can bug Mars in all of its beautiful 4K glory. So I guess it's probably worth setting up what Frog Fractions is.
It's long enough, and because Frog Fractions 2 didn't hit, one didn't hit for me. I didn't take to the concept.
I ended up really liking it, but it was not a sequel in the way you would think of a sequel. It was a follow-up game in a real way. Anyway,
it felt more like thematically in line.
This is a sequel. This is a sequel.
Yeah, you should set up what Frog Fractions is then, because it's been long enough.
So the first Frog Fractions came out and was this kind of it was one of a number of things that had come out that year, basically, that was kind of a surprise game in the sense that it was a sort of a deceptive trick. You looked at this thing, it was running in a browser. I believe it was browser based. Yeah. And it looked like a version of sort of the old edutainment games, Number Cruncher, Oregon Trail, that style. It was in that genre space. Though very quickly it became clear, like, wait, no, I'm not really doing math. I'm just a frog sitting on a lily pad, and I'm eating bugs, and fractions are appearing. I'm kind of clicking at various places on the screen to try to stop these bugs from eating these fruits. And then every wave, I can upgrade my frog, and I can move around and collect apples more easily. Or I can turn the apples into durians, which smell bad, which prevent the bugs from getting near them. Or I can get lock-on targeting for my tongue. And it becomes, eventually you end up getting upgrades. I'm going to spoil the original Frog Fractions here, because I have to talk about what comes next. You eventually realize you have a turtle that you're riding around on. You could hit down on the turtle and swim underneath the water. The whole screen is just like you're moving left to right and eating these bugs that are showing up, and suddenly you can go down into the water, and below the water are just all of the apples that have ever fallen off of all of the trees. And instead of having 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 apples, you end up with it's like billions of apples or billions of fruit. Don't even worry about it anymore. You can buy all the upgrades, and from there you get a dragon. The game briefly becomes a sort of Star Fox parody. You wind up in court on Bug Mars, where you are being put under arrest and charged with the crime of killing a bunch of bugs, which you did.
And it's real WarioWare vibes in the sense of, like, you were spending a brief amount of time doing one thing, and then the joy of it became, I don't know what, not just where the story is going, but what I will be doing mechanically, UI, everything was, at a certain point, everything was on the table.
Yes.
This could be anything. Like, the possibility space of Frog Fractions was so exciting in the moment, especially if you managed to play it when it was one of those, like, hey, I need you to play this. And then it would be,
don't ask me any questions.
Also, I need you to get back to me if you don't have a moment. Like, if you don't have a moment, then I need to prod you to go do something. So, because that happened to me. I remember
I
dicked around with it, and it was just like, okay, like, seems cute. Like, what am I? It was like, I think it was Alex Navarro. It was just like, just go down.
Just hit a down key. Yeah, exactly. There's a text adventure in there. There's a DDR clone in there briefly. There's a business simulator where you're making and selling bug porn. Which, listen, the Bug Mars is a boring place. You got to fill your time. And at the end of the day, you end up being elected president of Bug Mars. And that's the game. That's kind of the end of the game. Everything goes well for you, sort of. You go swimming at the end, I think. And it kind of wraps up. So I beat Frog Fractions again yesterday or 2 days ago. And I was like, oh, okay. I remember it ending more strongly than that. I think I was just blown away by the scope of the thing and all the different changes and it really is the first time you play it type of thing. But it didn't really land for me the second time. And then I was like, wait a second, I thought there'd be DLC, and I realized I did not hit the button that turned on the hats. I didn't press the Hops iconic cap button. But I'm glad I didn't, because
this is probably the ideal way to have done it, though. Even though that's not how you would have done it, but
totally.
To be familiarized to the point where you could clearly understand the divergent point.
Yes,
is probably good.
And then for people who don't know or don't remember, there was then what the creator of the game kind of considers the sequel to Frog Fractions. Frog Fractions 2 was an ARG that led to the release of a game called Glittermitten Grove. I think that's what it was called. I don't have a computer in front of me.
I was all over this. This was like a big point of me. I was like the tip of the spear covering this
on
ARG
AOL Instant
for early
Messenger.
Waypoint.
You were right. You should go back and read. There were IMs. There were episodes where we talked about us talking to people in character.
Yeah, we did a podcast where we had to like sort of disclose. We believe we've now participated in the ARG to a degree that we may be becoming part of the, like we might show up in a wiki entry or like a story that I write may have, in trying to unpack the ARG, become part of the ARG because the pace at which I was keeping up with what was going on.
Beautiful.
Never become the story, Patrick. That's the cardinal rule.
Except you secretly, you want to become the story.
Yeah. Also, I want to color this with one other thing, which is before I played Frog Fractions 2 or 4, when I got home, what I found was a gamer chair I bought for myself. I bought it months ago. It finally showed up because of production delays because of COVID. And so the first game I'm breaking this gamer chair in with is Frog Fractions 4 or Frog Fractions DLC. So Glittermitten Grove comes out. That is a game that on its face is this sort of like kind of town builder, like a fairy town builder, like
fully functional. Like
it works.
Whereas Frog Fractions pretty quickly, like it functions as like a throwback to edutainment stuff that, a lot of kids of the 90s like will remember, like early computers at like their school and things like that. But it's not, you can't play that for 10 hours. Like Glittermitten Grove, you could hand that to someone and they'd just be like, oh, like this is just like a fairy based town sim, and it has all. It's like there's not a point, at least early on, where you would go, like this is a bit or I'm missing something. Totally. You could just play the game,
right? And then at some point it ends up going into another. I forget how you even get there necessarily, but at some point you get there to where you're basically going in through a game that is very much like a bunch of old oh God, what is the name of the I guess it's influenced by ZZT, which was the Tim Sweeney like MS-DOS game, kind of a top-down.
Can we get Jeff Gersman on the line?
I know.
He would be the person to explain this for us.
You're a character who's walking around. In some ways, it's the original WarioWare, in that there's just like lots of different things happening. You're walking around, you're picking up torches, you have a gun you can use. There's a lot of like, well, what's going on in this room in that game? This is like, oh wow, Tim Sweeney had an idea for an encounter effectively, or a puzzle. And so you're like, oh, well, the puzzle solution for this is really unique. And then that ends up being the basis for what Glittermitten Grove really ends up being, which is just like a kind of weird adventure game with these kind of top-down MS-DOS graphics. If you've played something like Dwarf Fortress, you can imagine something similar to that in terms of ASCII art, in terms of using characters, using keyboard characters and typeset characters as stand-ins for things. And I ended up really liking it. I think it was a little long in the tooth. I don't think all of the jokes hit for me. I thought there were some puzzles that were really hard, some really difficult places. I know, Patrick, you didn't get through it at all. But the very end of that game...
I got like 90 minutes in, hit like a certain obstacle, and there was no nostalgia factor for me. So that's part of why Frog Fractions worked like the initial hook, because I played the shit out of like those edutainment games at like, that was like one of the things I would do is like, I'm going to go to the library and play, Mario Teaches Typing equivalents on the computers for a long time. And so all that stuff, like, number munchers and like, that was like absolutely my wheelhouse. Whereas this one, I didn't have a touchstone, and I can get past that, but like the rest of it just didn't, I just never found the hook. And so I kind of just fell off it and just experienced it through people like you and Jeff, who were having a better time with it.
Right. And then if I remember right, the end of Glittermitten Grove says, "Thank you for playing Frog Fractions 3." Because again, Jim, the designer of the game, thinks of the ARG as Frog Fractions 2. Jim Crawford is the name of the developer. And so this DLC is much more of a direct sequel to the original Frog Fractions. It opens. I'm going to give you the opening bit basically, and then I'll be a lot more vague after that. It opens the same way. You're on you're on the lily pad. You're trying to protect the fruit from the bugs. You're the same character except you have a hat on, and then you get the dragon upgrade, and it's very clear the dragon is being moved around by popsicle sticks or something. Like underneath each of the bits of the dragon are long sticks holding it up like a puppet, and then eventually you get to the point where you would take off into space. And someone off screen boos you and yells at you for your poor performance, but not your poor performance as in you're playing the game bad, your poor performance as an actor. And the camera pans out and reveals an empty theater where you are reinterpreting the own events of your life for a stage production of the original Frog Fractions in your post-presidential life. You're the character. And you go to there's a dude in the front chair in the front row who has on a fedora and is here to debate you and is mad at you because you don't want to debate him, and you just like get into it with him, and then you kind of get put on leave because you shouldn't argue with the fans, especially when you only have one fan, even if all he does is show up and yell at you about how it's not realistic. Now the depiction of frogs would never wear hats, even though you are literally a frog wearing a hat. And then you end up going home, and it turns into a couple of things. This DLC this game is an adventure game in some elements, that it has like a very classic adventure game. Go find this, combine this with that. How do you get out of it? How do you trick your security guard, your Secret Service agent, to look the other way so that you can kind of get out on the town with your daughter and have a nice time out? So that's like an early big portion of the game. And then like the original game, there's all these other mini games that show up. There's something sort of like Hitman Go for a while, a kind of a stealth tile-based movement puzzle situation. There's a lot of dialogue and a lot of comedy, and there's a lot of there's some dialogue puzzles in which the character with the hat who debates you comes around a lot, and the way you deal with him is just you have to not get irritated by him. So you have to make some dialogue options that are basically about not engaging, but there's an irritation meter, and if that fills up all the way, you lose. And then there's kind of, I would say a big chunk of the game is something that I would compare, I guess, to a long-form Dig Dug game, or a little bit like SteamWorld Dig, but more tile-based and turn-based.
Okay, you're speaking my language.
I want to be clear, it's not like a fun platformer in the way that SteamWorld Dig is, but you're going down there to dig. You're going down there to get rubies, and you're using those rubies to get upgrades, and you're avoiding boulders, and you're avoiding enemies, and that becomes the biggest chunk of the game is this thing, and getting upgrades to maneuver differently, or to swim underwater, and that's pretty good. I actually had a really good time beating that segment of the game. But you just get to know this character and his friend, the dragon from the original game is your best friend, and you have a daughter and a wife. Your wife is a cool cat lady who's also an Indiana Jones figure. It's very weird. It's pretty charming. I don't know that it's as it's not as ambitious as Glittermitten Grove was, right? It is literally
it just seems like it's a fun celebration of a re-release to give people to do something new to do with.
Yes. Listen, whatever this asshole was who said, "You're not the first who's been too scared to debate me. Chalk another win up for the Sequoia Falls Middle School debate champ." Great. Love it. Fantastic. That guy sucks. I'm down. There's a bullet hell segment that's fantastic. I don't want to spoil the joke for that segment. There's a hacking segment. There's a lot of skate videos. I don't want to say why. And there's a recurring Yakuza bit that's very funny. There's a specific thing that happens in the Yakuza games that happens in this. The music is good and the writing is good, and it's worth your time. But it's a fun cap on the last decade of Frog Fractions, and that's not what I ever expected this to be.
That's great. Yeah,
that's $8. The DLC is $8. I think the original game is free on Steam. The DLC, Hop's iconic cap, is $8. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it just to honestly support the original Frog Fractions, the developers of these games. It's such a snapshot of what this last decade in like comedy has been in some ways. And if you go back to the original game, almost it's aged kind of poorly, not in an offensive way or anything like that. Just like, oh yeah, our sense of comedy has changed over 8 years, and this is of a time and a place.
Pretty simple in retrospect,
yes,
or even
yes,
in some
exactly.
some places. But I think that's also a function of. The surprise was part of the humor, right? Like, so it's like, it's almost by nature of looking at it retroactively, betrays the part of the creative process for that game was the experiential nature of it. And so just by, looking back, in retrospect, robs it of some power, in a way that is, unfair to what they made.
And I wonder how the rest of those, I just wonder how the rest of those hold up. Like, has anybody played Candy Box lately? There were a few of these games that like came out of nowhere and someone sent you a URL and you clicked on it and I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? And I'm curious how some of the other ones held up.
That's also came around the same time that everyone was getting like very into clickers. Like I can't remember. There was one that I played for a good while. I can't remember. It was just one of the text-based one, like one of the really like ASCII art ones. But it was definitely like in that same period, because I just remember I was at Giant Bomb still at the San Francisco office, and it'd be a lot of like people on a second monitor had some sort of fucking clicker game
something
just
going on. Was that a dark room? A dark room was a big one. There's a bunch of them. There were a bunch of them in that couple of years, Anyway, that's what I got to play because that's what was on my computer. I also briefly played, and this will be a quick one, a game called Banners of Ruin, which is another card-based roguelike. It's another one of those. The thing on this one is it's like anthropomorphized animals like Martin the Warrior, or Redwall, or Mouse Guard. It's like a dark fantasy. It's very like self-serious. There are some cool mechanics that are like about, it's a game about very much like keeping your armor up and maintaining your characters and keeping them in the right order and moving them around on your side of the board to prevent damage. But it never really came together for me. I think the art is pretty good. The animations are basically non-existent. It's early access, so who knows if it'll get a little bit stronger there. There's just a lot of competition in that category now between Slay the Spire and Griftlands and Monster Train. And I think Gordian Quest, a game I've talked about earlier this year, is a much stronger variation on very similar themes. And that just got a big update. So like Banners of Ruin hasn't really done it for me. I will say there is... there's an ability there are abilities that just don't work right now. One of my characters got an upgrade in that game that was like, turn all bleeding damage to poison damage. And the way that bleeding damage works is you get a stack of it, you get 3 bleed, and that means over the next 3 turns, you'll take 3 damage, then 2 damage, then 1 damage, and then you'll be clean of it. The way poison damage works is it goes up, so you get 3 damage this turn, 4 damage the next turn, 5 damage the turn after that, and why would I ever want to turn bleed damage into poison damage? That's way fucking worse. And so that feels like something that just like slipped through the cracks. I mean, I guess that bleed damage goes directly to your health, whereas poison hits your armor first. So I guess I could see why you would maybe want that, but it's just so much worse.
Is there maybe any sort of antidote or anything?
There's nothing. I had the exact thought you had, which was like, well, maybe I can have a thing that like transfers my poison off of me to somebody else, or, like those sorts of builds exist in these games. Right. And I played for like, that run was a damn near full run. I got to just about the final area, and nothing ever popped up that would let me take advantage of that change. It only ever hindered me. Also, this is a game that, so y'all know in animal like humanoid animal stories, one of the things that happens is the animals are like races, and that means they all have racial characteristics. You know what I mean? Like this is Zootopia, this is a lot of these things, right? Oh, the elephants are big and slow, or whatever it is, right? Oh, never trust a fox. It's like that sort of stuff. This game doesn't do that in terms of character stats. And I was like, cool. The mouse is like, the mouse's class determines what weapons he can use. And so that means maybe he does less damage because he's a rogue and not a warrior. But there are a whole bunch of cards explicitly about racial difference and utilizing it against your enemy. Like there's a card called Tensions that gives a debuff to your enemy, and it gives an extra debuff if they have more than one race in like a rank of their characters. Like if there are different races standing next to each other, you really debuff them, presumably because you turn them against each other, or you pick at the scabs of racial tension. I don't understand. There's a bonus that there's a card that gives you a buff if your entire rank is of the same quote-unquote race. Also, let's be clear, bears and wolves are not a different race. They are absolutely a different species. I guess culturally in this world, they could also be racialized in that way. But why go down? You almost didn't go down that path at all, and then they really leaned in. They really leaned in. So that's a weird choice to make, especially with there's no lore around it, or any, you know what I mean? I'm not like clicking on the things like, oh, the wolf kingdom did blah blah blah. It's just like, here are 3 guards in this kingdom I'm invading, and one of them is an otter and 2 of them are bunnies, and that means I can sow discord between them, because of course we all know otters and rabbits are lifelong rivals.
Right. Obvious.
It's very weird. Very weird. So that's it. Those are the games that I've been able to play, given my limited access to the internet and everything else. What have y'all been up to? I know, Patrick, I asked you and you said Fall Guys in all caps.
Yeah. This is sort of the game of the moment on Twitch and YouTube and various places. It came it was relatively out of nowhere. Like I did some research because I sent some questions over to the studio for something I'm working on, and like they were like, you're not trying to dunk on some writers, but like your standard like E3 2019 interviews with the developers of this game. I'm pretty sure I was offered a meeting for this game and passed on it because I didn't know what it was. And then in the last couple of weeks, I just feel like I've seen this game had a beta that like went really well for it, and then it started blowing up on Twitch, especially. But Fall Guys is basically, it's inspired. I forget the game show that they specifically said it was sort of based on. I'm trying to pull. It
was like a Wipeout or a Takeshi's Castle.
Yeah, Takeshi's Castle was the one that they pulled from. Where basically the setup is you have 60. People that are all dumped into various sort of game showy sort of like levels, and there are like different things you have to do to survive, and like each round a certain number of people aren't going to make it, so you have smaller and smaller groups as you're proceeding through the rounds. Like you typically, as far as this is, like the 12 rounds or so that I've played, like the first round is always, hey, get to the finish line first. And so that'll mean you have 60 people all at once trying to, for example, there'll be a bunch of balance beams that you're trying to go on. But the balance beams are really only made for one person at a time to be on. And then maybe that balance beam, there's one on the right and the left, and there's also one in the middle. And so then you have people trying to jump to or navigate to that middle one. It has some funky physics that remind me of what was that? The Double Fine Publishing worked on it. What's the Gang Beasts? It has like some Gang Beast sort of like finicky physics, like you feel control over it, but there's sort of just a little bit of almost a rubbery quality to it. Like you kind of bounce off things, but it's not like a boing. It's sort of one of the things where like things are knocking into each other and affecting them. So you can kind of knock into someone and push them over, but mostly you're just sort of like bumping into people, and like it's like just slightly affecting like your momentum or the direction that you're going in. And so there'll be other in sort of like these gauntlet ones where you're just trying to go from point A to point B. Another one is like, hey, there's a bunch of walls, and some of these walls will knock over, some of them won't. And so you have 60 people rushing forward at once, all trying to guess which is the door that's going to open, because you could pick like door B, let's say, even though they all look exactly the same. They have the same pattern of like red and white. And you pick like these 12 like little puffy looking dudes are just jump at this wall and nothing. It doesn't move. And you look to your right and you might see that the 12 people that chose the one all the way on the right, that's the one that went through. And so it becomes really interesting to like figure out what your strategy is going to be. Is like, you don't always necessarily want to be in first place, because in up until the very last round, when it gets down to, I think, at least like roughly 10 people, all you have to do is qualify. So qualifying just means like, so in the first round where you're just trying to race to the other side, depending on if it's you hit the max of 60 people, it's something like 35 people can survive. So, like you're roughly half the people can stick around. You just need to be one of those 35 people that gets to the other side. So often my strategy is not to be first. It's just to be kind of in the middle of the pack and like see what other people are doing and then navigate through them and just, cool, I made it to the other side in like the 20s or like even the late 20s. Like, cool, I'm here. I don't need to be first because I don't get anything special for being first. And then the way that they mix things up as it goes along is so smart and so fun. Once I saw that it was just like a 60-person sprint to the other side, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's just how it happens, how it works the whole time. I was like, oh no, they introduce team-based games as it goes along. And you don't know who you're going to be partnered with. I believe you can do matchmaking, so like a group of people can be dumped into the same thing. But I don't think that necessarily means probably the game, if it's smart, it's not assigning you to the same team when you get to the team-based one so that you have reasons to not work collaboratively. But for example, there's an egg game. So this is in the later rounds, there's probably maybe 30 people. And so you have 30 folks like dumped into the middle of this circle. And in the center of that, like kind of like slightly sunken circle are a bunch of eggs. And then at 3 different slots, there are a spot to put those eggs. And so you can pick up the eggs. Like the only verbs you have in the game are jump, dive, and grab, I believe. Okay. And so you can do dickish things. Like I saw people who made it to the end of the first round really fast. They will just sit at the finish line knowing that they can just because you can watch in real time as the qualifiers come in. So you generally know how much time you have before you need to get across that finish line. And they'll just push people away. Just like, nah, like actually you're not going to make it to the finish line. And if you grab someone, you could hold them for like a full 5 seconds. So in theory, you could like hold someone, throw them back, and then you make it across the finish line and then they don't. One of the questions I sent to the developers was like, hey, like how are you accounting for like this sort of emergent behavior that maybe, seems in line with what you would want people to do, but maybe is against some of the spirit of how you want people to play. So I'll be curious to see how they manage that. But anyway, so the egg game, so there's like, I don't know, let's say 30, 40 eggs in the center, and people bring them to their respective spots, and there's a countdown for 90 seconds. And I thought the way the game works, like, oh, like eggs are just going to keep appearing in that center spot. And it's just like, who can get back there, bring the eggs to their spot as fast as possible. And then all of a sudden I realized like, oh, there's no eggs in the center. I was like, oh, shit. You need to then go into other people's little collections and try and bring those out. And because there's no voice chat, I believe there are emotes, but they're not. When there are 30 people running around that are just like indistinctly colored blobs of like red, green, blue, and yellow. There's customization stuff that looks. They just ripped off Fortnite, and there are season passes. There are like, I mean, this game is immaculately designed out of the gate to maximize its window. So you just have people. It's so fascinating to watch emergent strategies appear where there's no way to communicate that like people should be on offense or defense. It just sort of has to happen organically, or you recognize that's what needs to occur. Like what I realized
is that in one of my, or is that still
yeah,
one-on-one?
This is team based. So it splits like 10, 10, 10. So you've got like 10 red, 10 blue, 10 green. So then you're on a team trying to work collaboratively. But like I noticed in one of the egg matches that I was like, okay, we're ahead. Like we have like 32 eggs. There are like 10 eggs in the other ones. And at this point, only like 2 teams will advance, and then 1 team will lose, be in third, and their whole team gets disqualified. And I was like, look, I'm just gonna hoard these eggs. Like we don't need to get more eggs. We just need them to keep these. There are not enough eggs to beat us out, and we're already in first place. And it's like a couple other people noticed that, and all then you're doing is just trying to be an asshole. You're just like pushing and shoving, like dragging people down if they think they're escaping with an egg and throwing them back into the pit, and just being a nuisance. And for like the remaining 30 seconds. And it is such a joy. It feels great. It looks great. They had matchmaking issues at launch because it seems like this game has completely exploded in popularity, despite the fact that it's only available on PS4 and PC. Sony did do the smart thing where it sounds like at the last second they offered them a a bunch of money to become a free game on PlayStation Plus. People
Rocket League
forget
2.
People forget that Rocket League, like a huge part of the reason it took off. I mean, I think it would have done well regardless. But
the
part of it
like showed that there was an audience for it. Clearly, I haven't seen any of it myself, but like a bunch of people have individually messed. People who aren't like I'm not like super tight with have messaged me like, Austin, you have to play Fall Guys. Here is what I'm playing. Please come play this game with me. It's really good. I promise. So I think it would have found the audience no matter what. But
I think it would have found, but like with Rocket League, like the PlayStation Plus was an accelerant. Like it was like they just throw gasoline on a game that was already going to be pretty popular. Like it was one of the games where when you ask the question, was something like PlayStation Plus or is Game Pass, sure, more people play it, but does it actually result in more money going to the developers, or does it actually work counterintuitively? And with Rocket League, I mean, they got bought by Epic. It turned into a sensation. Like, I mean, it worked out well for Psyonix. I think that it's an open question on whether that's, a good deal for. I heard for a long time that PlayStation Plus was not particularly a great deal for a lot of developers. Whereas I've heard that with Game Pass, it actually has been a pretty good deal for developers. I don't know if that's just the nature of like audiences or of contractual deals, but nonetheless, like it meant that the Fall Guys had just an enormous first day. But by the end of the first day, I started playing in the evening. I would basically it would matchmake me. It would cancel out. It would say, hey, even though we put you in this server's game has started. Sorry. And I would just hit A, and then 15 seconds later, I'd be in a game. And it seems to have calmed down within 48 hours of its launch. But it's just such a delight. I mean, and I had this feature I did at MTV years ago when I was getting started, where it was like it was called like Up at 3 a.m. And that was back when I was 21. It was like, if a game can keep me up past 3 a.m, it's pretty damn good. And that is not a world I have lived in for a long time, even before I had children. But now my new measure is like up past 12 p.m. Like it's past midnight. Like midnight is my really hard rule of I have to be in bed, because if anything goes weird in the middle of the night with either of the kids, like I can at least get 4 to 6 hours of sleep and function the next day. And so I have to be in bed at midnight. And this game, it was like 11:50. I was like nearing the end of Carrion, and I was like, I want to play Fall Guys before I go to bed, and I loaded it up. I had like a really bad couple of first rounds where I kept being like, fuck this, fuck that, fuck you, I'm going to start over again. Like I got to get at least like 2 or 3 rounds deep. And suddenly it was 12:15, and I'd broken my more usual sacred rule, which I think speaks a lot to the game. I really can't recommend it enough. It's going to be huge when they eventually get this on Switch. They've said that they're actively working towards that, but just, I mean, I can't, like, you load it up and it literally is like the Fortnite UI of like, here's your floppy, gooey Play-Doh character. In the corner is, here's how much you've filled a meter to like level up. Here's the store that you can tab over to. Here's where you are in season 1 of Fall Guys. Like, they've built in a lot of the stuff that you would often games build in retroactively, which is, shit, our game's a success. Like, what are the things that you build in to like retain people past the initial week or two of interest? This game has it immediately. Like, it is so polished and ready to roll to retain people and to turn it into like a real force, the next like beyond thing. Just like the headlines of the next like 2 weeks. It's just really, I was really impressed by how forward thinking it was like at day one.
For me, it's very much the thing of like, I've been curious what is going to try to take that core, underneath the battle royale wasn't shooting. It wasn't hiding in bathtubs. It was, here is 60 or 100 people doing a thing at the same time. And everything that can kind of come from that. And so I've been curious to see who's going to play on that side of the Battle Royale's success. So seeing this take off is not that surprising to me, but the stuff that you're saying about it just being ready to go as a product is not what I expected from seeing trailers and stuff. Like, no offense to the teams, but like I watched a trailer for this a year ago, and it was not. I did not expect there to be legs on it in that way.
Well, that was part of my one of the questions. I was like, all right, like for real though, like at what, like how late in the game was it? Like we need to add season passes and have them be there day one, because it just seemed it's just not the thing that you usually see, especially for Devolver is. Calling them a small publisher is probably both like still like yes and not accurate at the same time anymore. They like to pretend they're smaller than they are, but like this game is going to be already is huge. So they like having their scrappy image, but at this point they are probably closer to a medium tier publisher with the amount of successes they've had at this point. And I was just impressed by the level of polish and forethought they had about how do we make this stick around past people's attention window. But I'm with you that like Battle Royale, I played PUBG, played Fortnite. I think Battle Royale, I think Halo is going to be like, they should, if they're not, that game is like really well designed for Battle Royale.
They announced that Halo Infinite multiplayer is free to play too, right?
Yeah, we didn't touch on that. Yeah, they said that it leaked in like a retail image. It was like, it's going to be free to play at 120 FPS, and then like an hour later, there's like the Halo Twitter was like, yeah, that's happening, which I think is really smart, especially considering that I increasingly think that campaign is going to arrive like actively on fire when the Xbox Series X launches. Take aside however rough that rollout was. Like, imagine being on a team that is doing a premier launch game straddling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms, right? Like 3 existing Xbox One platforms and 2 brand new Xbox Series X and whatever they're going to call, the lower tier one. And it's like a open world game which your studio hasn't done, and also during the most important period of like getting that out the door, actually your whole team is going to be split up and have to adapt to a brand new way of like working remotely. Like, I mean, even in the best of circumstances, I think that game was going to like be a sprint to the finish, because that's just what that world is like. But the cards they've been dealt to even deal with that is I feel bad for what's
it's
going
to be
on
a rough
there.
one.
But I think that multiplayer is going to be a big hit, and I think the Battle Royale would make a lot of sense for Halo. And this is like a long, aside to that. I just have grown tired of there aren't that many scenarios I can imagine where like X shooter adapts Battle Royale and then I'm interested in playing it beyond just like as a curiosity. Like I tried Call of Duty, like I've tried a bunch of them and I was like, cool, yeah, this makes sense, but not for me. But I love the idea of like mass player dynamics. And so that's why Fall Guys has like scratched a lot of the same itch for me that a PUBG or a Fortnite was doing, because like I love the idea of just so many people thrown into a thing at once. But Fall Guys is one of the first instances where it's like, yeah, but like what if that in a totally different context?
Right.
And that's what I've been excited to see more of, is like, okay, what the lesson of a Fortnite or a PUBG, like what is that on a broader design scale? And Fall Guys, whether or not this is like purposely they looked at that and decided, I don't know, but it feels within the same design universe of playing with the same ideas. And yeah, it's tremendously fun. I want to sit down with my daughter and play it and see if I can get her to cheer for me.
The developers' history is so interesting, because if you look,
it's so weird. The developers are so weird.
They're like the go-to. They're one of a handful of folks who started literally making like Flash games 15 years ago, and then
porting games to Flash,
and then were, from what I'm looking at, one of those huge audiences that was, or studios that was doing early work on bringing games onto smartphone, but not just like games you would have known or heard of or liked, but just like churning out stuff for iOS. And again, like you said, lots of web-based stuff. The web-based version of like the Vancouver 2010 ski jump mini game from Sega's Olympics game goes to the web because they do that for them. Or I guess they brought a bunch of the brain training stuff to the web. or again, lots of just like licensed stuff. Lots and lots of, they did this for Adult Swim. They did this for Warner Brothers. They did this for they brought, God, I saw something else that just, MotoGP onto Facebook. And just like doing that churn and like, we're going to be that middleman.
They developed Gears Pop.
Right.
Like, even so like that's the very
thing is you
recently.
See this change in like 2014. They were the folks who I guess brought over and localized Hatoful Boyfriend, the pigeon dating sim, and then bit by bit, it's like, wow, they did that Fable Fortune game, which I think is like the
Fantastic
Fable
Beasts cases from the Wizarding World for Android and iOS.
Right. New Yahtzee. If what you wanted was Yahtzee but new, you could play that.
Yeah, but this is new Yahtzee with buddies.
With buddies,
Austin,
I see.
Don't sell this game short.
Yahtzees. And then this year, Murder by Numbers, which is the Sudoku. That game is great. And then now Fall Guys, and then like that arc of being deeply commercial, like not that this. I bet that prepared them for the thing you're saying that they did well here of giving the game coming in with a season pass and understanding that there's a long tail on these things and trying to encourage that. Probably comes from 15 years of doing the sort of work that like no one signs up to do when they say they want to make games. Very few people say, I want to be the person who's going to port Bejeweled to a website. But they did that work, and that's interesting. Like, I think that's I have no idea what the company culture is. I cannot speak to that at all. But that's a fun arc to have to look at.
Well, even the way the storefront works is I haven't like totally worked out how all the thing, like you get more points as you get further into rounds, which then fills a meter, and you're getting unlocks for the season pass based on how you're leveling up through it. But then, so there are two currencies, like this is purple, amorphous, Fall Guys currency, and then there are crowns. And the thing you get if you win a round, like the final thing that occurs is like when you're down to 10 people, there's like a sprint in a smallish kind of area with a handful of obstacles to grab this crown, and only one person gets it, and then you win. And I haven't done that yet, and at this point, I probably missed my window because I needed to do it when, like, in the first 24 hours when people didn't know how to play the game. But those are the two currencies, are crowns and this purple money. And so I think my guess is you can probably outright purchase that stuff to get some of the more unique outfits. But it also does seem like then it rewards, like, hey, if you want the most unique stuff, crowns are required. And so it seems like you can either get that by buying it, and I reserve the right to be wrong on that because I don't want to misspeak because I didn't like fully investigate the UI on this. But it also seems like, hey, like if you're a really good player, you're going to earn crowns, and then you can get like the dinosaur costume. And that's just like a neat way to think about how you're going to reward players for like, hey, this person like is clearly good at the game. Like they have something that you can only obtain through crowns, that which you get all the way at the end of one of these rounds. And just there's all sorts of things you can. They've already said they're going to do like a Twitch integration where that's going to influence what happens in the play spaces, and it's there's just the possibilities are sort of like endless for what they could do in this, that it's like really, it's just exciting to imagine what it'll look like even in just 6 months, because great, you nailed the foundation already, and there's just nowhere to go but like really fun stuff in the future.
Awesome. I'm going to check it out once I have a computer with the internet again, or a PlayStation with the internet. Once I have the internet again. We should take a quick break. When we come back, we can talk more about some games and some news and some other stuff. So, BRB. All right, we are back. Cado, what have you been up to?
Hey.
Where do you want to start?
I was away for a while, but before I left, I got a few hours into Necrobarista, so we can talk about that. That came out 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
Now.
That's a game that was announced years ago now.
Yeah, I had actually never heard of it when I got code, and I was like, "Oh, this looks neat." I like the style, and it's essentially a visual novel in a kind of how do I explain this? I guess normally when you think of visual novel, you imagine that in your head. You've got like a dialogue box at the bottom of the screen and some sort of 2-dimensional kind of representation of whatever characters are speaking, and like
Yeah. There's like a background, and then and then the foreground is character art, right?
Exactly.
And then further foreground of that is dialogue, like you said.
Right. That's just kind of like what comes to mind for general visual novel. And this game is actually rendered in 3D, and you can think of it as like each couple of dialogue boxes, the camera will change, right? So like because it's 3D models, it's got a lot more of a kind of cinematic feeling, because they're the whole thing is shot where, like in visual novels, you'll have dialogue that will be like just the character art, and then there'll be, when something special happens, there'll be like the one like full illustration of like that thing happening, when that happens in visual novels. This is like everything is framed and set up very deliberately. So that's like the first big change. And the second thing about this that is very interesting is so the story is about this what's it called? Cafe. I can't words this morning. My brain is not. This cafe that exists in the space between the world of living people and whatever comes next. Is basically like this kind of purgatory in between those two, but you only have a certain amount of hours that you could spend there before you have to move on. And what's interesting is that people can actually somehow transfer and end up selling and bartering for those hours, because the next like phase is unknown. Like people don't know what happens when you cross over,
which is scary.
Right, exactly. So like sometimes people just want to stay there. Sometimes people accrue. What's interesting is that this specific shop has accrued a large time debt because they let people stay, and then their extra time kind of transfers over. Like the time that those people that are staying in the cafe like stay extra, like it becomes a debt that the bar
or the cafe has to own or has to pay.
Yeah, has to pay to like an institution that like keeps track of all the times.
How do they get time to pay it back?
Well, they have to like one of the things that actually happens kind of earlier on is what one of the baristas, the like main character, her name is Maddie. She's like the one with the red glasses that you see on all the art if you go look up this game. She runs this underground betting like ring of like the first one is she plays the knife game, where you like put your hand on the table and like you have to like put it in between your fingers.
I know the knife game. Yeah.
And people just like bet that they could like do it as more times than she can, and she always wins. Obviously, it seems, I haven't gone much further, but there's definitely something nefarious about the way she's doing it. It's probably magical. There's a lot of illusion so far. I'm 3 hours in, but I think I'm only like there's like kind of a chapter like overview that you can see in one of the menus. I'm probably only like just about hitting half, not quite to halfway through. And they haven't really explained exactly what her deal is yet, but I'm interested in like it's very, if you like anime, it's very kind of like in that type of like storytelling that's very I guess bombastic is a word to say. Like the characters are all kind of outsized, but that kind of makes the moments where they're more staid and restrained interesting, right? Like you can, it makes those like bigger moments feel like facade in a way that is kind of, interesting. And then as you move through the story, what's interesting is that in between kind of episodes, there aren't any like dialogue choices. You're not really playing a specific character. But there's moments where you're in the cafe and you can move around in like first person, and you can interact with different objects. And each object has another like, story associated with it that you can only unlock if you've collected certain words that link to these memory. The objects are linked to memories. And so what happens is at the end of each kind of like main chapter, you get like a series of words that were said during that chapter that were associated to certain things. And you just kind of pick them. And then you find out that each one, like, for example, somebody said the word knife, for example, when they were doing that knife thing. And you kind of are trying to guess at what it's going to be associated to, because there's a second layer of like meaning that is what is used to unlock memory. So then the word knife is associated with magic in this case. And when you're back in the like first person area roaming around, there'll be a memory that requires you to have 3 magic words and 1 like Maddie word or something, for example.
Huh.
So it's
What if
it's
you is it possible to not have what you need?
Yeah. I've
interesting.
like there's basically you're the cafe is like this 2-floor deal. So on the first floor, like when you start out, there's like, let's say 10 different memories that are like available. I had moved on to the second floor and had only actually unlocked like 2 of the first floor memories because I like got word combinations that were not quite enough to unlock memories. I think you can go back, so like I'm not sure exactly if it's possible, but so far it seems like you will be missing stuff on first playthroughs, right?
Right.
And I don't know, it sets up this very interesting kind of like you're like thinking of words and as you're like playing, as you're like going through the like set scenes, those words will pop up, like they're like highlighted in a color, so you know like, oh, that's one of the words I'll be thinking about later.
Right.
So you end up trying to remember, which is interesting because they're linked to the memories that you're trying to unlock. And it has this really, I don't know, there's something really interesting about the way that it associates the word that you're picking to its like deeper meaning that has this, it has this sense of memory, right? It has this sense of like, I don't really remember what this was about, but I remember how I felt during it or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
there's like it's like tickling something in your brain. It's like an it's as if there's an association that you can't quite reach to. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting mechanic to kind of unlock these other like extra story bits. And then the characters themselves are like really fun and exuberant, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of these people very obviously like Full Metal Alchemist. There's a lot of like alchemy references that are directly tied to that series that are fun.
Lots of laws of equivalent exchange type stuff.
More like lots of transmutation circles and like alchemy in that specific sense. And then like the whole like trading your time situation kind of like runs into a little bit of like equivalent exchange. Like, yeah, you can pay for this coffee in time. That's equivalent, or what is equivalent is in question. But so yeah, I've been really enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would when I started, because I was kind of surprised that there wasn't dialogue, like there wasn't dialogue choices rather.
That it wasn't, that it was kind of a kinetic novel,
that you weren't a perspective,
straightforward.
like you weren't embodying a perspective character, where like normally you kind of do, right? Like that's kind of the point of a lot of visual novels. And so, but the fact that like it still is interesting, there's still kind of choices to like what you unlock and what you're trying to like, the connections you're trying to make is still really fun. And I've been enjoying it. And another really odd thing about this game is something that happened today, where they announced that there's new mechanics coming even though the game is out, which seems weird.
What?
Yeah.
What? Is it coffee mechanics? Is that what it is?
I don't know. That's the thing. It's that they've
not
announced them,
asked, or
but they've not
said.
announced what they are. It's like we're adding redacted and polishing redacted, which is it's weird. It's like what is? I guess it was technically early access if they're adding that sort of thing.
But it's out on Apple Arcade. That to me feels like it's out.
It is out, and I think it's finished. But from what the announcement says, there's like characters that you briefly meet that they're going to expand on. So it's just like there's still more to it, even if like a 6-hour game doesn't sound like you're gonna like sit with it. They're adding stuff. They're adding new stuff already, which is neat.
Yeah, totally. Right. Well, I'm glad it came out. Like again, this was a game that I remember seeing 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a Kickstarter for or a trailer for, and I kind of felt like, whoa, this looks great. And then
it has
did not
a fucking sick late title card that is
hell yeah
late as hell. Like I was like, oh shit, we're doing this now. Okay, it's really good, really stylish,
incredible. God, you also said you were playing another thing. I don't know if you want to shout that out really quick.
Yes, Hex. This is interesting because I played it wrong technically. So you remember that game, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, right?
Yes, of course.
You've got one player sitting in front of a bomb, and you're supposed to cooperatively play with somebody else who has the instructions on how to defuse that bomb. Hex is very similar, but what it is that you're a hacker, and you're hacking banks to steal money.
So far, so good.
Yeah, sounds great. Except it is that same sort of setup where you're supposed to be talking with another player, but because both players' things are like Keep Talking Nobody Explodes, one of the players' things is like a physical book usually that you print out, or like you can have the PDF, but whatever. It's like not
but it's like a game. Manual. There's a separate thing not on the screen. Yeah.
Right. In this one, it's both both things are screens because you're both hackers. One of you is just like supposed to be like on location. The other one is supposed to be like remote. But so what it allows for as far as solo play is that you can actually tab between the two screens. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. I picked it up because I thought it like I really enjoyed what's it called? I can't remember, even though I enjoyed it. That Zachtronics game that came out a year ago. The hacking one. Exapunks, yes. Yeah. I put like a fair amount of time in that. I was like, oh, another one of these it looked like. Turns out it's not like that at all. It's less actual like coding stuff and more like a series of different puzzles that you have to communicate with another player with.
Similar to Keep Talking, presumably, right? Where where like, oh, what do you see? Do you see something green or whatever?
Yeah, one of them is like those pipe mini games that are like hacking mini games in fucking
a million games,
every game, right? One of those is that, but you only there's a set number that the person on there's a set number of pipes that the person like on location sees, and then the person that's remote has a blank like grid where they can drop new pieces for that other player. So it's that sort of thing where you have to communicate, okay, like I need an elbow piece at D3, and like you drop it on, then the person on the other side spins it to make sure it's in the right position and connects all the pipes and stuff. One of them is a password force app where the person on location just like taps in a random password, and then on the other end it gives you the probability of each of those letters being in, and it gives you a list of like possible passwords that you can try next. So you're just kind of reading out the passwords to the other player, and they're typing them in as fast as possible to try to just force into a computer. One of them is y'all remember that Morse code bullshit on Keep Talking where there's like
Yeah, the blinking light.
The lights and radio. There's things similar to that in here. Like it keeps getting as complex and
yeah. Gotcha.
It increasingly gets more complex to the point where even as one player flipping between the instruction, it's here's the thing. That's the
even
thing that's
with
different
perfect
about this.
information, it was difficult for you.
Yeah,
even though you literally knew.
So. The thing about keep talking is that one person is doing interaction, the other one is just reading instructions and trying to relay information. This is both sides have interaction that they have to do correctly or else it fucks up. Right.
Okay.
Like you're not only giving the person like on location information, you're also pressing buttons on your end with the information they give you back. Right. It's going both ways instead of just the kind of one like as far as like interaction on the screen goes. So I can see how that would be really fun with people. It was like kind of maddening as a single person trying to tab back and forth and not understanding like, oh shit. That's the other thing. The tutorial is real bad. This isn't like keep talking where because one of the things is literally the instructions that you just have to read through them and eventually you get to know them. It's like in game while the timer is fucking going down. There's a timer for all of these heists. You have to like click a tutorial window and read through both sides as one player. So it's just like kind of frustrating to get up and running and understanding what even the game wants you to do sometimes. For example, if you play the pipe game, it's not super clear that whatever is there for the person on site, like the like set pieces that the pipe puzzle starts with, all of those have to apparently be connected in a single loop. And then you also have to reach the end, which can be done separately. And it was unclear. Like I kept getting failures and I was like not understanding because there's a piece where you can like cap a pipe basically. And apparently that doesn't work for those set pieces. It only works if there's an extra piece off to the side that you placed that needs a cap. Small things like that where it's just like the instructions aren't super clear. But given the type of game that it is, it kind of makes it you're gonna like do a lot of trial and error anyways.
You
like
do multiple runs, and
especially if you're only looking at one side of the thing, you only have to do the tutorial of either the control or the hacker on site. It's probably less frustrating than like, I'm spending most of this timer the first couple times just getting my head around what these puzzles mean because they're not very intuitive. But once I did get them down, it actually kind of felt great to do it by myself and like swap back and forth like real hacker shit, like tabbing through windows and shit. But I'm sure this would actually be much more fun with other people, so I'm gonna see if I can try that soon. But yeah,
cool.
It's
Let me know how it goes.
it's an early access still. There's like quite a bit. Forget exactly what the number of like heists is, but there's like planned like many chapters. So it looks like there's gonna be lots of different puzzles and stuff.
Cool. Before we get out of here, Patrick, I do know there's some news stories you want to hit and talk through, including some
343 announced as you're recording this that they are adding a co-developer for Halo Infinite, which
what?
is not that's
what?
No, it's just a supplemental studio. Every AAA game does this.
Now?
It's literally while we were
No, but that game's but when are they adding them?
Spare stuff. There are
going forward though. That game's out in months.
Yeah,
they're called basically like supplementary studios. They're studios that are designed to just like, hey, here's a bunch of work that like the main team can't get across the finish line. It is offloaded to these like supplemental studios. It's actually like a lot of like how Ubisoft is structured. So it's like, I was just laughing at the fact that this came across as a headline
just after,
like this is the responsible thing to do is to bring in somebody else, contract someone to like, hey, you can. There's all sorts of things like the equivalent of busy work that it's like, why would the main, the more critical, designers, programmers, etc. work on X, Y, and Z when it's like, hey, these folks can follow the blueprint and take it across the finish line. So
while we're working on some more critical stuff, sure.
Yeah, this Sparasoft studio, this is literally what they're built to do. Is like they come into games and it's like, what do you need us to do? Go do that. It's like, okay. So it was just
cool.
Anyway.
I hope 343 gets it. I hope that game comes out good.
Yeah.
I would like
that
one
game,
of those.
That game kind of has to ship, but I've also, it is not hard in my head to like imagine the campaign slipping to December and then
launching,
and
with
the
free,
multiplayer is what launches with, and it's like, hey, it's still coming before the end of the year, but here's the multiplayer on day one. Sort of as increasingly it becomes like kind of clear, it's like this next gen launch is going to be.
How long has it taken the Master Chief Collection to ship in a complete state?
Yeah, they committed to turning that into something that is now heralded as like a best in class like way to treat a collection of games, but it took them an entire generation to get there.
So yeah, I think there are still some issues out there too. So anyway, other news things. Wait, why do you have Spider-Man written down here?
I thought it was at least worth noting the Avengers game that comes out next month, September, right? I think it's mid-September. It's going to get Spider-Man as a PlayStation exclusive character.
Avenged-any?
I think so.
Stop it.
Yeah, look, I've seen. There's enough terms out there, Cado. You don't need to give them new ones.
Yeah. Did you see the thing that was going around? So a couple things. There was some sort of press beta, right? And some press impressions got out there. But did you see the screenshot of did you already talk about this? The Avengers.
Oh, yeah, I think I shared it in like our work Slack. That's just like,
with the UI, the 8 different currencies and all of the different. It's just like not what I want from that game. From the jump. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get how a game gets bloated and you wind up with 8 different currencies. I've played Destiny, but it didn't launch it launched with a bunch of. It did launch with a bunch of currencies also, but just it feels like
just
it feels
three,
like that's not. Right, not 7 or 8 or whatever it was.
Whatever it is now.
That screen looked like a version of something that you would see in a Marvel Ultimate Alliance or something, in terms of just like, here's all the different, gear you can equip with lots of incremental tiny bonuses to various things. And, some of the early impressions that I read seemed generally
the impression seemed to like generally
positive,
to be the game is better than you thought it might be. I was invited to like the press beta that all these were written up on. I was like, oh, it's like, open for the weekend. It's like Sunday night. Wife went to sleep, family's in bed, sat down with a beer, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna check out this Avengers beta that I used some of my bandwidth cap for, which is Comcast finally decided, even though the pandemic's not over, like, cool, we're like done giving you unlimited data. We're back to charging you for that shit. And I sat down and they're like, servers are offline. And then I looked at the email and I was like, oh, it was only Thursday, Friday, Saturday, not Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Brutal.
Like, that sucks.
Brutal.
And I'll be out of town this weekend, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to play it this weekend. But anyway, I just thought it was curious. The Spider-Man thing is curious because it's not like the Insomniac interpretation of Spider-Man is being put into Avengers. It is just Crystal Dynamics version of Spider-Man being put into Avengers, and it's a DLC, which means it won't be story dependent. It'll just have to be a character that gets added. And it also appears that they were like a year ago were like real cagey about the fact that they weren't planning to do crossplay, which didn't make a lot of sense for one of these types of games. And I don't know that I necessarily want to draw like a line to, if you want to include Spider-Man, like can't do crossplay, but it seems to have been potentially a contributing factor for a game that would benefit from audiences. Look at the Stadia version of Destiny 2. Like the audiences communities being able to play together can be important. And like Spider-Man, it's not just like what would you do? It's like, hey, if someone picks Spider-Man, like they get matchmaked somewhere else or can't, you know what I mean? Like weird.
I mean, the thing that, just to be clear, he's only coming to PS4, right? Or to Sony platforms, because this game will come out on PS5, presumably also. You do what you do in a fighting game. You make sure the character exists on both platforms. You just only you just don't get to play as him. Do you know what I mean? In a fighting game, you don't download the DLC.
I think this is Sony. So I should be clear. There is no indication that contractually Sony owns the video game rights to Spider-Man. And it's my understanding that is not the case. Like, even though the rights
like
were
in a broad way, you mean?
In
You
a
mean
broad
like
sense. It is not, it is,
yes.
there is nothing like sort of preventing, like Spider-Man was in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on
which
Switch,
was on Switch,
right? So, so like even absent insider information,
Spider-Man was in Marvel versus Capcom, whatever the most recent one of those was.
But like even like that was
Right.
like years ago at this point. Like even after Sony and Disney like renegotiated, things could be kind of like thrown in the air, and Spider-Man PS4 came out. Like it is my understanding that Spider-Man could appear elsewhere, but that he's like not, and part of that is partially a Sony and Marvel are like it'd be pretty tight going forward, and so I think this is Sony sort of like making a deal with Marvel to be like, hey, we want Spider-Man to be a PlayStation IP basically, and this is a way of. But the reason I felt bad was because like just like Crystal Dynamics like clearly couldn't just come out and say that, like go read like this really painful IGN Japan interview where the guy is like whatever designer or whoever, it's like like this is the only character that's going to be like this, and like Sony and Marvel just have like a special relationship, and it was like really painful for, I don't know if this game's going to be any good, but it like came out of the gate and was just panned. Nobody liked the way it looked. It was like it had a real mountain to climb after its first impression. They seem to have been endearing some goodwill, or that like they'd be like listening to fans, and like I don't know, like it seemed like things were kind of like in an upswing for it, and then something like this comes along and it's just like as they go into the home stretch for launch, it's just like Sony puts them in a hole in a way that
people
seems,
like Spider-Man. People really like Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man like
character.
is a very popular, if not the most popular, comic book character, especially on the Marvel side. And yeah, it's just but I have heard that like stuff like this, like Sony locking up, or just like locking up third-party stuff in general, is going to be a theme going forward. So
new consoles, new reasons to try to
get ready for
attention
for more of that. Yeah, it's going to be
great.
It'll be interesting.
The less frustrating news, though there's still aspects of this that frustrate me as someone who is pro labor organization and pro smart labor organization, is the story that came out of Bloomberg. Was it 2 days ago now from Schreier? Let me just read the headline. Blizzard workers organize on company Slack seeking pay increases. Good on them. I'm super excited for the fact that they're asking for very specific things. They're asking for a different like changes to the way the promotion process happens. They're asking for more vacation time, some like,
QA and customer service, getting
QA,
like better pay.
Exactly. Don't do it in the Slack. Don't do it in the company Slack. Please, I'm begging you not to use your company, anything owned by the company, to do your organization. If you want like to make if there are ways to strategically have an event or something on the company Slack and do a Slack takeover, there are things you can do there. But don't do the organization on Slack, in Slack DMs, with your work email, on the work network. I'm begging you. There are
it does seem
of
like
examples.
part of the reason, though, but like part of the reason, Jason was able to report on this was you're right, but by having a story written about it, it sort of, not that it doesn't prevent Activision Blizzard from like being vindictive, but it does suddenly make any move that the company would make that could be perceived as being against the folks that are organizing for, like, let's be clear, like some pretty milquetoast demands.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like a radical transformation of like the relation between labor and management.
Yeah.
But like, I agree with you that like you're getting that into a separate Slack.
There's just
like
too many examples of Amazon firing people who are trying to, or Google firing people who are trying to organize.
It also means they can watch, right? Like I
don't
know how Slack works exactly, but it would not.
It is
I would
not
imagine
secure for workers.
They can somehow find a way to read everything that's going on. And you know what? Maybe if this organizer was on this call, they'd be like, yeah, like. Fucking, we want them to watch it happen. Like we want them to watch the unrest, and I could see the argument there. I'm begging you, if you're listening, even not at Blizzard, to be very thoughtful about where and how you organize, because however much you think you have the upper hand in terms of the optics, they will use every advantage they can to shut you down, to separate you, to remove information that you need, etc. So
please, there's actually a great article up on Motherboard, just how to organize your workplace without getting caught. Please read that one. But also, just to be clear, huge shout outs to the folks organizing this. I do think it's great that they're doing this. I cannot imagine working at a behemoth like Blizzard that has been so notorious in terms of its work conditions, in terms of the demands it places on people in its
there's been a lot of folks coming out in the result of this story mentioning that like when they've had relationships with Blizzard's like sort of like recruitment efforts, about just how much they radically do not vet, like they put so much of a priority on the prestige of coming to work at Blizzard and will like not even necessarily match salaries that you currently have because they're like, but you get to come work at Blizzard. And like I've heard that like publicly and privately from a few folks like since this story came out. I mean, I even, I ended up sharing, I don't work in development, but I shared a similar story that I had where I interviewed a game pro before I went to Giant Bomb. And the offer letter was like laughable and like what I was making when I was 21. And I said, no, it's not nearly enough money. And the response was, you should like be happy that you get to do this job. And I said, fuck you. And went to go, took the better offer letter. So like this stuff is like, this is how like that sort of like prestige, like come work at a, quote unquote, amazing company. Like that's how that stuff becomes insidious, especially over time.
Totally.
So I hope. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the first pieces I wrote for Paste back in the day was a piece with Ian Williams about a recruitment video that Blizzard did, and about how in this video, like, this is a big company that at the time still had a good reputation as a place to go work because of a lot of fringe benefits, a lot of like free meals in a beautiful cafeteria, a great campus. The pay was better than their competitors at the time, blah, blah, blah. And none of that shows up in the recruitment video. The recruitment video was 100% prestige, quote unquote, family, talking about the sorts of projects you'll get to be a part of. And none of it,
this
like,
big orc statue in
look
the
at this
front
big
of the
orc
place.
statue. Exactly. And it's like, if you're not making it a priority to recruit on the basis of the material relationship that you're offering somebody, the pay, the benefits, the fact that you will have free meals even, or blah, 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 then those things that's not what the company values, right? Those things are now secondary to just the prestige, and they'll be the first ones on the chopping block. They're not going to ensure you good pay because they're not even basing their recruitment efforts on good pay. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's deeply insidious to try to bring your workers in on the promise that what you're coming into is a family or something like that, because it's not. That's not what the relationship to your workplace should be. You can be close to your coworkers. You should have a sense of camaraderie. You should absolutely build a sense of solidarity. But your management team is not your family. You know what I mean? You shouldn't bend or flex in the same way that you would for a loved family member. And any demand that a workplace makes of you like that is going to be an effort of taking advantage of you in some way. So always be on the lookout of that stuff. And again, shout outs to the team there who is leading the charge on trying to make their workplace a little bit better.
Yeah, and it's like just between this, you had the writer, the contracted writers at Voltage, like actively doing a public strike, which by the time this publishes, there'll be some news on that I can't get into here.
Okay.
And like those are all, I feel like all of these like little signs that hopefully 10 years from now, hopefully sooner than that, but like you look back and go, oh, those were the things that led to bigger changes.
Yeah.
Like I know, like just like when you say it out loud, like people organizing to share how much each person makes, to have a sense of how much you're being over or underpaid relative to your coworkers, like that seems like really small, but like we don't, like, just those basic things aren't even happening. And so like those are the building blocks for actual like material change that may seem incremental at the time, but like will have knock-on effects that will appreciate over time. And so hopefully this happens at Blizzard and then happens at other places, big and small. It's really important that it's happening at the big places. I mean, you want smaller places to treat their workers right. It's important that happen wherever, but it's like real movement like doesn't change without it happening at these massive studios that employ thousands, tens of thousands. And so hopefully this is just the beginning of more folks doing this privately and then publicly talking about the disparities. But hopefully this hopefully results in better pay and better conditions, and also inspires for other folks to to do the same thing. Like, because it's one thing to like share it on Twitter. Like, I think that's good. Like, I did that. I shared what I make, and in the hopes that well, one, makes it clear how much of an outlier I am to other folks that do writing for a living. But that doesn't help. Like, you need the data collated like amongst the stack of everyone, and it can get lost in social media. So making this organized internal list is like a better way to understand how exactly
where those
like,
discrepancies are.
Yeah,
what you
where
can
like
negotiate for. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with when I shared how much I made, which I was trying to be helpful, but I also noticed in the discourse around me sharing that was like, oh wow, like actually it turns out games writers like make pretty good money. And I was like, no, oh, okay, like really needs to, like, because there wasn't the context of like what other people make, like it wasn't clear that no, like I'm a long-standing outlier compared to other folks. Like, yes, there are other people that like make what I do, and but there are the vast majority don't make anywhere near that. And so like the reason it's important, I thought it was important for me to explain how much I made, was to show the discrepancy, because that gap is important, whatever you make, whatever you think or make of how much I make doing what I do for a living. You need to see what the people are making along that spectrum. It's like, I'm just a small data point, and it's like without understanding all the other data points, it doesn't really work. Systemically
speaking, your data point exists as justification for the other data points. Like, one of the ways in which capitalism's internal logic functions is the production of outliers, such that the bulk of people can look at the outlier and say, that'll be me one day. I'm definitely on the road to that. When in fact, and this is no discredit to you or your skill set necessarily, Patrick, but like the way you get there is not just hard work or skill. Right? Like, there's a great deal of luck. There's a great deal of things lining up nicely. There's a great deal of being in the right place at the right time.
And it's getting paid like shit for a long time. Like, I'm 35. Totally. Like, I spent 13 years not making much money.
And there's a deal of it that does come down to like being in the right identitarian categories. Like, as a white dude, and like as a white dude who is a dad, who is from the Midwest, there are all these different things that fit you into workplace cultures very smoothly. That has not happened for a lot of other folks, where they wouldn't necessarily be able to jump from job to job because they would feel a sense of insecurity. They wouldn't feel like they could. And again, I'm not here to psychoanalyze you or discredit
no, but
your
it's also
career,
that,
you know
and
what
it's
I mean.
Like when someone comes to work at Vice or goes to anywhere else, and they want it, they look at their own resume and go like, look, my work stacks up to Patrick's. Like, I'm sorry, I haven't been doing this since I was 14. Like, that dude's a fucking outlier. Right. But like,
they should be able to negotiate, right? Yes.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying I need to be necessarily paid what he's paid, but like, relative to what you're giving me, like, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
And like, that's the value of having that available.
Totally. And the thing to remember about these numbers, it was like, it's wild to think about here, but if a company, a for-profit company is paying someone something, by and large, they are making more from that person than they are paying them. Vice is
I'm underpaid. Well, like, not even saying
not as much as other people,
whining.
Certainly.
I'm just saying that, like, that's how all of that works. It's like they have to make a profit on you.
Correct. They're making a profit on you. You were being alienated not only from the product of your creation, but also from the value that you're producing for the company. Then it's happening again. Certainly not just Patrick, also for Cado, also for me. I know what the fuck it is. Listen, we could one day I will disclose all of my numbers at some point, and we can be like, whoa, okay, weird, because they are not great. I think I've talked about before having the shit that this company has put me through to get up to where I should have been compared to other people at my level, including some people below my level. In any case, it sucks out there. I'm happy the folks at Blizzard are negotiating and are organizing, and I hope that all that shit goes well. My headphones are dying. My headphone just gave me the like boop.
Oh, you got the beep. No. That means you got 5 minutes, so we got to wrap up.
Let me tell you something. I got the second beep. It already beeped at me once. Oh, we should wrap up.
Why are you wearing both of them at the same time? You got to do the one AirPod switch to the other.
That's what I should have done. You're right. In fact, I bet they're dying at different speeds. Even I wanted the because I use the right AirPod way more. I basically don't need the left AirPod. Like, I could use 2 right AirPods, and that would like be a better use of my time. Just do the triple
anyway,
beep.
Sorry, now we're wasting your time. You're going to get a third beep and you're going to disappear.
Thank you as always to Bowen for letting us use the track Miss You off the EPPL machine. Find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. Find me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. Find all of us, twitter.com/waypoint, waypoint.vice.com. Where can people find you, Patrick?
At Patrick Lubbock.
Cado.
At @_Cado_appears.
As always, we'll be back on Monday with more, and fuck capitalism, go home. Patrick, before we started the podcast today, a thing that I said was, we looked, there was a Sony event that was going to be happening, right?
Yeah.
And what I said, I can't pull it up because of laptop issues and internet issues still, was we don't need to cover it unless anything Waypoint canonical happens. And there's a limited number of games that fit that description. I mean, it's
and I said explicitly, I was like, no. I asked around, it's cool. This is not the event that we need to record late and stress Cado out with editing and yada yada yada.
Exactly. Hi, Cado. And so we chose not to cover it. And now it's hours and hours later. We've had full days. I've been tapping my foot, waiting for the internet to show up. It hasn't shown up yet. And it turns out that at this PlayStation event, which has some other stuff I might talk about on Monday, there was a release date trailer.
Let's be clear.
Yes.
I left. I went and I walked I knew this was happening, and I was like, I'm good. I'm not going to sit down and watch this. I'll just catch up afterwards.
Right.
I'm taking the next 2 days off, and I was like, I'm going to go down the street, get the car cleaned, use those little vacuum things, get it all worked out, just spend a little time chilling out as the day starts to wind down. And then I told my wife, I was like, hey, can you watch the baby? I'm gonna take an hour, go finish, winding down the day. And I come down, just Twitter blowing up. Just people yo, what's up? And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? Did my drafts folder just get published? What happened? And then
a real megaton.
The real not megaton. What was it? The giga leak?
Yeah. But it would be a megaton if your drafts folder
the Discord DMs that Austin and I had a couple hours ago got leaked out.
God. Anyway,
there's a Spelunky 2 release date.
There's a Spelunky 2 release date and a trailer
which I have not
seen yet.
No,
I watched it on my phone, which is not ideal, and now I'm going to watch it on my computer because I've already seen it, so it's okay that the next thing I'm going to say is real.
So you're saying we're not here to talk about the 30 minutes of Godfall?
Oh my god, that trailer kept going. There's other stuff there. I think Genshin Impact looks cool. I think that game with you're running with the hawk, that looks cool. That's a cool studio. Yeah. That game looks cool. I'll talk about that on Monday. For now, we're gonna live watch the State of Play Spelunky 2 release date trailer, which you've not seen. I've seen it. I'm now gonna watch it at 144p tethered to my phone. But you'll see. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
Okay. All right.
I think this is a great trailer. That's all I'm saying. All right.
All right. So 3, 2, 1, click.
And then go. Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Look at that is that new ESRB logo?
I think so.
I'm the creator of Spelunky.
Hi, Derek.
Yep. Oh.
For Spelunky 2, I wanted to make sure we made something that got old fans excited and also brought in new players. It was important.
Now, we'll say, I have been worried about this game.
Yes.
I'm worried about Spelunky 2.
Oh, dead.
Oh, that's good.
Already.
Fans of the game through their friends and family.
That was a big dragon.
That was a big dragon.
That's one reason why we're adding online multiplayer, so that more people can play
online multiplayer.
Together.
Get it?
That makes sense. Online multiplayer,
And I also wanted to include that feeling of community into Spelunky 2 itself to make sure that the game felt.
What was that? What was that 4-leaf clover? What was that?
I don't know.
I want to know what that item does.
As you do runs and discover new characters, you'll also be building an in-game community and family.
Cool. Yeah. Ashen does that. I love that in Ashen.
To feel much more rich and dynamic than Spelunky 1. It's going to feel a lot more full. Players will be able to explore and interact with it in lots of new ways.
All right, levers,
hitting switches,
turkeys,
riding turkeys, returning turkeys to get a key.
Truly, when he says you're building a family, how can you do that without bringing in turkeys?
Between branching paths as you make your way deeper into
the new trap type. You see that?
Oh, yeah, branching paths. That's an interesting idea. That also chooses a lot of elements for him to hide.
Yes,
secrets in this game.
After many hours of playing, I still have interesting runs that don't even go past the first area.
Me too,
In Spelunky 1,
Derek. Me too.
runs
I don't.
centered around their shops.
I too have many interesting runs. The interesting runs that don't go past the first area is not how I normally describe it, but
We've expanded the shopping experience and made them more nuanced.
Dice
and
in a shop that you
I wonder
that
how
kill
the, I
you.
wonder how the
exciting.
dice
Help you
works.
or hinder you.
I don't know. That's an
You know how
NPC with a
amazing the Spelunky
crossbow.
community is?
Every time you throw the
It's hard to
dice, is
say
it gonna
how
like
long
create an
it'll take to
effect?
find the
Is
deepest
it?
I don't know.
But I think the great thing about Spelunky is that the deepest secrets are the ones that even I don't know about. And there are lots
Clam.
of new things to play with that I hope players
Telepack,
can
power
use to
pack,
push
freeze
past
ray,
the
shotgun,
boundaries
Clone
crossbow,
gun.
clone
as the
gun.
developers
Look,
know
look,
about
look.
the game.
Clone
they're
the
cloning
dogs
the
and put on the
dogs.
altar.
Two types
Oh,
of
that's
different
good.
stories
That's
from
good.
Spelunky fans.
That's good. People are really gonna
First,
exploit
when
the
people
clone
are
gun.
genuinely surprised
Yep.
by something that happened in the game.
Love it.
And
That's
second,
Spelunky to me.
shared a fun experience with friends.
Yeah,
and
with the
family
shotgun
who
blast
play.
killing the
Blast.
shopkeeper. That also,
But yeah, also killing you. Yeah.
I'm excited for the fact that online multiplayer means people will discover that Spelunky secretly had like really good
Really good. The competitive
deathmatch.
mode. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the competitive
yeah.
modes were fantastic, but
Yes.
just no one tried them because they were
Knowing that
local only.
possibility was out
Oh,
there
this
is what's
water
been
stuff.
exciting for me and the rest of the team.
Oh,
In
all
a lot
sorts of
ways,
stuff you can
when
do with that.
Yeah, the
Spelunky
physics
comes out,
stuff is
I want
the
players to
part that I
experience what we
am
experienced making it. That feeling
very
that
curious.
there's
The
something
lava,
special
we saw the
there waiting
water
for you to
Yes.
there in the trailer.
A big thanks to the fans who've waited patiently for us to finish Spelunky 2.
Even
Thank
just
you,
this stuff of
Derek.
jumping
It's been a
around.
long
Oh,
journey,
I
but
love it. I love
think
that
it's gonna
death.
be worth it. Thanks.
This is the best. This is the most you understand what you made.
God damn it. So if people don't, if you're not
That's
watching, it's
Spelunky
just like
to me.
a character that dies, but also Spelunky doesn't like immediately send you to the end credit screen. Like as long as like there's interactions in the environment, it will just keep going, and so you have like explosions going off and just sending this body
yeah.
careening around and then hitting
Someone being
enemies, who then
thrown, and then
that's-
bouncing off a boost pad, landing on a UFO. It's just like that chain reaction stuff is so good. And hearing Derek talk about what, we were talking over him obviously, but one of the things that Derek says there is like the goal was to create a game that had a more like greater texture to the interactions, which is really an interesting way of thinking about it because, Spelunky is already a game that I think has really good like texture to the interactions. But the idea of there being maybe more moving parts or a greater sense of possibility when you bring different objects together is really exciting. So,
yeah, it still doesn't like.
I don't
I
think
need
there's
to play
a
it.
thing. I don't.
There's
for
not
me
a thing. I
watching
guess
this-
I kept waiting for
No, and I don't.
Is
I don't-
there some core the thing that like would shout out to you? This is why I had to make Spelunky too,
and
which
I
it
think-
doesn't.
I think the thing that answers it for me is, he says on this trailer basically like, I finished Spelunky 1 and still had ideas. And thinking about Spelunky, we talk about this a lot with certain types of games. We talk about the thing where like, oh wow, this game has an idea and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And that could be the Titanfall like time travel level. That can be like a great Mario gimmick. And the idea of Derek being like, oh, I had 4 or 5 more of those scale of ideas where I could build an entire level around. For instance, if you look at this trailer, there are like treadmills on one of the levels. Stuff with the water stuff going down. Like, this is the trailer that made me feel like, oh, maybe I just do want more Spelunky. Maybe I'm wrong about wanting some big dramatic super change. Maybe like levers are enough to make me ready to play more Spelunky, like over a long enough timeline that it's been years since I played Spelunky like daily. And this is the trailer that made me go like, oh, I just fucking love Spelunky. September 15th, by the way.
Yeah, not far.
Not far.
I do wish Spelunky had a level editor. I wish that was something like I feel like this like a game in general. Like there are some mods on the PC side for the original,
Yeah.
but this is like a game and like I agree. Like so much of the like sort of like semi-authored, semi-randomized element is like inherent to the experience. But I also think Spelunky is a really underrated platformer and action
Yes.
game
Yeah.
where in watching it, you can get the impression that the player has like it's just a little more finicky than it actually is, when there is certainly a finickiness to Spelunky. That is part of it. It's how you're supposed to kind of like lose control and things go sideways really quickly. But it also is like a really good controlling, solid action platformer that, like, if you were just to take Spelunky, remove the randomization of it, and just put it in authored stages, like I think it could also be like a really excellent one of those, which is why
you want Spelunky Maker.
Or just like that, yeah. Like if that was like added on, like if that was that, I guess this is me just continuing to think of like if that was like, and we're making more levels, more features, but also now you can like make your own, because people do that already. People do make their own Spelunky levels by modding the game. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm a little bothered that it's PS4 only. It seems like
Is it not for PC?
Well, and I haven't said anything, I don't think. It's only ever been shown in relation to PlayStation. I do think that's also what happened. Did the PC version come out at the same time as the Xbox Live version? Did it?
Oh, maybe it didn't. I bought that game twice, so probably not, right? Because I think you're probably right. I must have bought it.
I think it came out on Steam later. I think that was a game that Microsoft, when they were kind of on fire, I'm looking now. It's the Xbox, July 4th, 2012.
PC.
August 8th, 2013.
Which is like a year later. Huh?
Yeah, a year later. So I wonder if that's going to also happen here, which would be kind of a bummer.
The Steam version will come. I found it 2 minutes ago. Derek, you on Twitter. The Steam version of Spelunky 2 will come out shortly after PS4. We'll need a little extra time to iron out multiplayer on PC. Release date for that soon. After Steam, we'll look into other platforms. So shortly after.
That's fine.
That's not bad.
So it'll come out in like October or something like that. Which is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mostly because it's like, look, sorry,
I don't want to. Yeah.
Sony, I'm not signing up for PlayStation Plus so I can play multiplayer.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'd do like a month of it, but like.
I mean, that is the other thing here is I will play this game multiplayer, which I did not do much of at all in Spelunky 1. Just the fact that I'll be able to do that more is great, because that deathmatch mode is fantastic, and so is even
the single player co-op is really underrated. Every time that I did it, I never made it very far.
Me either. It's miserable. The amount of it's really hard.
The stories that come out of the co-op are wonderful because it just amplifies. I mean, everything that's like good about you doing it by yourself is amplified by doing it with another person, especially because things move so quickly in Spelunky that it's just great. It's
you just have to give up on the idea that you're going to win.
It's a different game. It's a different game. Like you have to play it fundamentally different with a second person. It's fundamentally like at least more conservative because it's going to open. It's basically a different game.
I also think about for me it's like if I can regularly play that game with someone, I could think of a lot of ways in which you would develop strategies and roles, and like, all right, you get the freeze ray, you're going to be the freeze ray person. I'm just not going to fuck with the freeze ray. Freeze ray comes up, Patrick, that's yours, and you can use that to help deal with the shopkeeper or whatever. I'm excited for those sorts of things to start happening, and also just to like. I was thinking moments before this trailer started about the degree to which I love novelty in games and how like I just like to see new ideas get put out there. And so the fact that there's just going to be 4 new, or I'm guessing 4 new, I don't know for a fact, but a new set of levels with new trap ideas and new interactions is enough to, I think at this point, keep me excited.
I'm really excited. I was so taken aback. Well, I played Spelunky, bounced off it, and then came back to it later. Right. I didn't like it's same as like, dude, I had a similar experience like with this in Dark Souls, where it was like played it, was like, oh, okay, not for me. And then now it's on a top 10 list for me. So September 15th. That means
we'll be there soon. A little over a month away.
Put out Spelunky. Put out the original on Switch. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait. All right, well, we'll be back next week. Patrick, have a good vacation. Cado, thank you for letting us do this.
Yeah, no problem.
Bug Snacks look cool too. All right, bye.
Also, Alan Wake was there.
Right, yeah, Rob wouldn't let us go.
But was he?
Didn't say that. Or was he?
All right, yeah, I'm recording too.
Time that it is. I don't know if I mentioned my laptop power cord also died this week.
Oh, great. Maybe you should
I got
push
a
your
new
AC
one.
out of a window.
I got a new one. It doesn't work. So either it's also bad or my laptop is fucked. So
Is it not just a USB-C thing?
It's not. It's a Surface Pro or Surface laptop that has like a proprietary thing. It sucks.
Ah.
Yeah.
It,
Me too. All right. 23. All right. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I guess we just come back in. I guess we just say. All right.
Great.
Good ending.
Crushed it.
Crushed it. Nailed it.
The third
All
beep.
right.
What is that?
Boop, 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 boop.
Bad.
Yeah. The third
Yeah,
beep
there's
is
one
some
that's just
sort
like,
of-
bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna get hit with it any second now. All right, I'll try to figure out how to get this over to you ASAP.
Great.
All right,
Thank you.
sounds good.
All right,
Bye.
peace.
Bye, y'all.
Talk about it. I'm gonna complain into this microphone.
Great.
But it means I can't do a backup, so you should do a backup.
I always got one run, just in case.
Okay, good.
Wait, why can I hear myself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very
Yeah.
soft, though.
I'm very what?
You're soft.
Damn, owned.
You've lost your edge, Klepik. No, I can hear my echo through your phone
Yeah, I brought you
somehow.
down in my headphones.
Okay.
Like,
You
my
are
AirPods.
very echoey.
Yeah, well,
What are you using?
I'm my AirPods.
Huh.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that you're
I've
getting an echo
made you-
through that.
Yeah, me too.
I've lowered you both in my ears, so
Those are
I mean,
your
I just
quiet.
like when we did the Ubisoft and Ghost of Tsushima, I used AirPods and didn't get any.
and nothing.
I'm just yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe when they're older, I don't know.
Wait, are you?
Oh, I wonder if it's. I have an idea.
Mhm.
Or what? What are you gonna say?
Well, I was wondering, are you sure that it's set to both the mic and the headphones?
Well, if it was not set to the mic, you probably wouldn't get an echo because then all of the sound would be in my ears, far away from the speakerphone part of
phone.
it, right?
Well, I guess it depends on how sensitive that the speaker is on your phone.
What I think it is my fan is on. I'm gonna raise my sensitivity. Someone else talk and see if there's still an echo.
Hello.
Does that count as talking? Sneezing off mic?
God damn it.
What if I turn on
It's
this?
not that big of. It's like it's not bothered. I can live with it. If it's not going to impact the recording, I will be just fine. I like don't stress over it.
That seems to be
All
cool
right.
now.
I turned on noise suppression, and I think that fixed it.
Huh. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Well, now Cado is echoed for me, but I don't know why. So
It's not reading Cado as Patrick. It's reading you as noise. It's not reading Cado as noise.
well, that's fair. That's how my children treat me anyway. So
Damn, owned. All right. It's gonna be weird. The time that is off a phone.
You can still get to it, right?
Yeah, it's fine. All right. Are y'all there?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 15 seconds. All right. See how this goes. It's gonna be fine. It's great.
Yeah, it'll be great.